My earliest memory of going to see fireworks was with my grandfather when I was 6 years old. His name was Harold Bowen Willman. To his friends, he was Bo. To my mom, he was Dad. But to me, he was always Pampa. You see, an older cousin of mine had trouble pronouncing G's when she was a baby. So instead of calling him Grandpa, she called him Pampa. And it stuck, as those things tend to do. We were living in Urbana, Illinois back then, which is a college town a lot like this one. Anyway, it was the 4th of July, and Pampa suggested that we all go watch the fireworks together. I remember that the night felt very special. I was allowed to stay up way past my bedtime, so late it was even dark. And then we got into his big blue station wagon and drove across town and parked. When we got out of the car, I noticed other people from all over town were doing the same thing that we had just done. They were all parking their cars too. And now, they, just like us, were all carrying blankets out across the big field and looking for a good spot. Once we found our good spot, we spread out our blanket. Strangely though, instead of getting under the blanket, we sat on top of it. I immediately crawled up next to my Pampa and put my head down on a pillow that he had brought along just for me. And then we waited. I had no idea what we were waiting for, but we waited. Then, right in the middle of a sentence that was coming out of my mother's mouth, bang, an explosion. Startled, I grabbed Pampa's hand. But incredibly, instead of being scared, everyone just looked up and smiled. It was magical. Pampa held my hand firmly and smiled at me as I stared in wonder as the sky filled with beautiful colors. In a lot of ways, that was Pampa. He had a way of being both strong and gentle at the same time. His strength came from his gentleness, and he was always there to hold my hand and show me how to enjoy all the simple magical moments that make up our lives. Not just fireworks on the 4th of July either, but other things too. Things like, if you hold a dandelion just right under a person's chin, you can find out if they like butter. Or that every time you pout, you create this perfect place for a bird to land right here on your lips. He also somehow always found the last piece of every puzzle that our family made together, usually in his pocket, although he never could say how it got there. He gave great hugs. He smiled when I ruffled his incredibly silky white hair. He was always happy to let me shoot him with the paper from my straw. And while he personally didn't mind, he knew that sometimes other people got upset when you made that really loud slurping sound at the end of a particularly tasty milkshake. So he taught me how to get every last drop out of a milkshake very quietly, so as not to disturb anyone else. He was a very well-known geologist, who with a totally straight face always told me that the piece of gravel I asked him to identify was probably some kind of conglomerate. He hiked mountains well into his 70s, and went whitewater rafting for the very first time in his 80s. He was always calm, loving, and strong. While a lot of these things felt less magical as I grew older, they were somehow always special when my Pampa was around. Even when I was in high school, I still liked to hit him with the paper from my straw, and I was never worried about not looking cool when I hugged him. It was just after my senior year in high school, July 4th, 1984, 30 years ago tonight, back in Urbana, Illinois, a town a lot like this one, that he succumbed to the radiation treatments and chemotherapy that he was undergoing to fight a brain tumor. I was in New York at the time, so I never got a chance to see him and say goodbye. And sometimes I'm sad about that. And other times I realize that if I had, my memories might be different. They might be of a fragile and confused old man who had lost all of his beautiful white hair and walked with a cane, instead of the memories that I cherish of the man who was full of life, love, and quiet strength. The memories of the man that I have missed every 4th of July for the last 30 years, and most days in between. His name was Harold Bowen Willman. To his friends, he was Bo. To my mom, he was Dad. But to me, he was always Pampa. I love him still. I always will.